Hi, welcome to the League-Kempner House in Galveston. We are a nonprofit restoring this incredible home, and if you've been following us on YouTube, you know where we are. We're down in what we call the basement. It's the ground floor. If you're new, this has been where all the action has been going on for the last 4.5, 5. Well, we're actually going into year 6 on the restoration. But we are doing a big cleanup down here, and I'm going a little bit out of order. We usually post these chronologically, but you'll see the cleanup and the mess down here in later videos. But I wanted to kind of jump because I found something and I wanted to show you. And this is why we have to be very careful cleaning up, because everything down here is usually something important, and these are very important. So I have to be part of the cleanup process since I know what everything is. But these are braces that go up in between the floor joist, and I found a video that I shot probably a couple of years ago talking about these and what they're for, and for some reason it never got published. So I wanted to show you that because we're kind of getting to a point in the restoration where these need to go back. You've seen us do a lot of joist replacement, and that's just one step. Getting these braces back is an important part, and we'll see that over in the kitchen also. So let me show you the video and what they're for and why we saved these. Hi, welcome back to the League-Kempner House. I'm standing in that same place where I finished up last week's video because Joe and I, as I mentioned there, are down today to check out the floor. We're primarily here to meet another roofer who is giving us a bid on the roof. We talked about the exciting news at the end of last year. We received a grant from the Kempner Fund to pay for finishing up the roof work on this house. So we're very excited about being dry from the top, and we're very excited about being relatively dry from the bottom. I say relatively because this will never be completely dry. We'll always have a little bit of moisture problem down here, but we are at 98% of the way there, and that's where we needed to be. And we'll get into some details about keeping this dry and some of the risk of over drying this area, as well as the risk of it being too wet. There's going to be a balance in there, and it gets a little complicated. But today I want to show you what went on in this area and get a little bit nerdy. I have not given you guys your nerd fix in a while, but we're going to talk about everything above us here and what's going on, why we did, what we still have to do, and some of the science behind that. But for now, I'm just excited to have this done. Joe and I walked down those steps. We didn't have to worry about tripping or falling or stepping on uneven concrete. Everything is smooth and level. I did notice one safety hazard that we need to address, and that is the elevator. Let me turn the light around for you. Yes, this big hole. So this is actually a big hole. We never worried about it. Yeah. There we go. This is actually a big hole. We never worried about it much before because this ground was down about 15, 16 inches. So it made a natural barrier where you couldn't just accidentally step in. But now that we've poured the floor, it's up at ground level. So somebody in the dark, not knowing what's here, could easily step through here. So we will get some boards and board that off. In the meantime, we will get some caution tape up. And one thing we'll do down here in the basement is this will be a bit of a museum display area. It'll be a long time before, if ever, this get fixed. So we'll clean it up, put some lights in here and show it off. So it may be that we get some plexiglass and put across the bottom here so that people can look in and see how the bottom of the elevator works. But we will get some caution tape up today and make that safe for people like me who tend to have problems. But let's get back out here in the basement and talk about what's going on. Let's go back to what happened with that beam. Just a quick recap. There was a temporary beam that had been placed right where I'm standing, and this is where the wall of the cistern was. So it had posts sitting on that wall, which were very strong and carried the weight down into the ground. And then there was a beam set across it. And this is one of those problems that happens when you change your mind. This area was the very first thing we tackled when I bought the house 3 years ago. And I had a pretty good plan for the basement, knew what I was going to do. That's when it was being restored to be a private home. So I had a design down here to make kind of a mother-in-law suite or an apartment down here. It was going to be expansive. It was going to have a huge, huge, incredible bathroom that ran this length. It was going to be great. Then we made the decision to go with the nonprofit, and that changed the scope of the work in the basement. We now need that kind of basement real estate to be available for ticket sales, gift shop, functions around the house, but we still want an apartment for base revenue to help us be successful. But it can't be a big apartment. It's going to be a small one-bedroom kind of a student apartment. So that necessitated a redesign. Well, in that redesign, this is now the living room space, and the bathroom is back here in this little corner. So instead of the wall being here where that beam was as originally designed, the wall needs to be about 18 inches over, about right here. And that doesn't seem like much, but it makes a big difference in the livability of this space and how you access this space. Unfortunately, if we put that post and beam back here, it would have not been over the wall of the cistern. And you can't just put a lot of weight on a 4-inch concrete floor. It's not designed to carry that load. So we had to do something to strengthen this to make it able to have those posts set on it. So what you saw them do was dig a big trench right here, basically right next to the brick foundation that was there, put in those rebar stirrups and rebar, and pour a 2-foot by 2-foot concrete beam, it's called, underground. So now we can scoot over that 18 inches, set post, and put a beam back overhead to support these joists. Now, I'm standing here. The joists aren't falling. They're fine. They're strong. But there is something in the beam called deflection, and that's basically a sag. So we want to talk today about joist design, the strength of a house, why that sag is bad, and whether it's a safety issue or not. So let's just get into some basic physics. So from the load-bearing wall over here, where the joists sit in pockets, to this beam over here, where they're sitting on top of a large beam, that's called the span. And I'm going to run real quick and pause the video and grab my tape measure and measure that span so I can talk about it. Okay, so I've got my tape measure, and oh, that's almost perfect. That is about a 16-foot span. So that's not too bad. So there are tables you can look at when you're doing design that basically tell you how far you can span with certain types of lumber. So this was originally 2x12s, old growth wood. 16-foot span is fine. It also tells you how far apart they need to be, because obviously the more you have, the more that load is spread out. When you look at those tables, you need to know the load coming down or the weight coming on that. So the architects would have had estimates of that. So these floor joists were designed to carry that load. Now, one thing engineers are good at is putting in a safety factor. So the floor they designed, or the joist system they designed for this, had a lot to do with safety and strength, but they don't get anywhere close in their design to being a problem of strength. It gets into more serviceability, and that has to do with deflection. And deflection is just a sag that occurs naturally as you span an area with wood. It sags down. We've talked about that before. And sagging doesn't necessarily impact strength. So the best example I can give is a trampoline. Think of a trampoline. You can bounce on that trampoline. It deflects down, sags down quite a bit, but it's still strong enough to hold you up. But you don't want that in a floor. That sagging and bouncing, people call it a spongy floor or a bouncy floor. It's not great for the house above. It can affect things like cracking your sheetrock. In the case of the kitchen floor up here, that deflection that occurred when these ends rotted out and this whole floor kind of cantilevered down, that's what caused the tile to break free from the subfloor and cause problems. So we're really talking about the feel of the house and some of the aesthetics of the house, like the plaster above us and the feel of the floor. So these are certainly strong enough to hold us. But when we did the patching and replacement of the rot, we got more deflection. And we really saw that when that beam was removed. And just to kind of show you, I'm going to try a little experiment. I've got my laser level here. I'm going to kill a couple of these lights that we have on. Or my hands are so cold, I can't do it.
Like some help.
We'll just point them at the ground. Oh well. Okay, I don't have, I'm not going to. Okay, this is my handy little laser level that's coming so handy. And I'm holding it, and when I get it off the self-leveling, you can see it flashes. That means it's not level. If I get it level, it goes to a solid line, or level within its ability to self-correct. Now what I want to do is I'm going to climb up on my handy dandy basket here and hold the level up inside these beams and try to get it to where it's level to where it goes into the wall. And get it to be not flashing. It's wiggly, but it's not flashing. Okay, film over here. Okay, I'm right at the wall. Now, look on this beam right here, how far down we are. We're about 2 inches to the base of the old beam from being level with the wall. That means we have 2 inches of deflection in there. Now, I've been going up and down and measuring. This is one of the heaviest parts of the house. We're less than a 1/2 inch deflection as we move back that way or this way. But here in the middle, where all the weight is, we're at 2 inches. Now, on a 14-inch span is what I calculated this morning. That's how far apart I thought these were. It's okay to have a 1/2 inch of deflection. So this is a 16-foot span. It would be a little more than that. You basically take your length in inches and divide by 360 to get the amount of allowed deflection. So this needs to go up. And ideally, we'd prefer no deflection. So that's why when we took that down and saw the sag, I knew right away that we were going to have a beam across here and pick this back up and get rid of that deflection. So when we do that, we're basically shortening the span. We're almost cutting the span in half. So one way to strengthen a floor is to have a shorter distance to span. It takes a lot of the load off. Another way you can strengthen a floor is by sistering additional lumber to it, which we did because we were actually patching where these two joists butt together. You can also have a longer span if you use larger size lumber. So we could have taken these down and put in bigger lumber. That's not really an option for us. This is by far the cheapest option.
And the new lumber isn't as strong as the lumber either.
Well, and that's the problem too. Joe just mentioned that I wanted to talk to you about. The span also or the amount of distance you can span also relates to the strength of the material you have. We've talked at length that new lumber is not as strong as old lumber. It's slightly smaller. It's a faster growing pine. It just does not have the strength. So even if we took all this out and put one continuous joist across with new lumber, we would probably still have a significant amount of sag, and we don't want to come in with steel beams. We have a rust problem. So this can all be easily fixed by setting those posts back on our new beam in the concrete. Ricardo will come put those temporary posts back over here where we have the foundational support on the wall of the cistern. He'll jack this back up, get it level. We'll put the new beams in and let the house basically rest on that new beam. Now there's other problems down here. So to maintain the integrity of the joist, there are all kinds of rules about cutting holes in it, notching it out, doing things to it that destroy the integrity. So where it sits on the wall, there are issues there because all that load, remember, has to transfer from here, come through the joist, and get into the wall to go to ground. So there's a lot of weight right where that board is sitting on the wall. That's called a crushing factor. Can the grain of the wood hold up or will it crush? So think about taking a 2x4 and hitting it really hard with a hammer. It leaves a dent in it. That's that crushing force. Now, the old wood was very resistant to crushing, the new wood less so. But to get all that weight over here on the wall, code really only says it has to sit about 1.5 inches on the wall. We've gone deeper than that. One, to help distribute the weight on the wood, but also to alleviate some of the pressure on the brick. Because if you don't go deep enough in, that weight is not only in the wood, but it's transferred to the brick right there, and you can get spalling, or basically chips of the brick flaking and falling off. And we saw a great example of that out in the garage. If you go back to our early videos at the beginning where we had to rebuild the back of the garage, we were getting significant spalling and cracking of the brick from the weight of that coming down because of a bad design. So crushing is another issue with the wood. I mentioned cutting holes in things. Holes are less critical. They let you drill holes just about anywhere in the code. So we have a lot of sections where there was holes drilled for pipe. That's less of a concern. But you can still get excessive, and there are rules about how many. So one thing we'll do is we'll go through, again, this is critical path. While the ceiling is open and we can look at it, we'll do an inventory joist by joist by joist and look at the condition and see if there's anything else that has to be done. And I just noticed a problem right here. So if you look, you can see a crack running horizontally, almost dead center of the wood. And that gets to be a little complicated. No. Here, Joe can't see it. Hold on.
Well, I can't get the.
So sometimes these cracks are just from the drying of the wood and normal aging, but sometimes they are actually failure of the wood itself from excessive load above. So it's important to really examine it, know what's going on, and understand the difference and if and how it should be repaired. Okay, so that's a lot of concepts thrown at you. I'm going to talk about this right here because it kind of exemplifies a lot of those things. This is the area you've seen before that had a 6x8 beam. It was very deteriorated on the end, so it was not able to transfer the load and bring it down into the support. And when we jacked this up and took it out and put in a new 6x8 beam, the whole thing sagged noticeably. So that's an example of the new wood not being as strong as the old wood. We had to take that out, go get an 8x8 beam and put in, and that did much better. But it still has a little bit of a sag right here, and that's where all the weight of the servant stair, all 3 stories up, comes down in this area. So we can't go much bigger than this. We could have gone with maybe some steel in this area, but what we've elected to do to fix it is to shorten this band. So by shortening this band, we'll increase the ability of this to carry load. But just like the wall that we looked at before, we can't just set a post on the 4-inch concrete slab and pick anything up. So right here where I'm standing, they dug a big hole basically to create another large concrete footing. Now we don't have to put the post right in the center. Anything we do to shorten this at any point starts taking off load. So to determine where to put this one, this was more of a functionality of use of the space. This is going to be kind of a display space that we'd like to have a little museum down here, some things that don't go to the house but that we'd like to keep. So we need the ability to walk through this area. A post right here in the middle would impede that. But we already have some headroom issues because of the stair coming down. So it made sense to not be here, but to get over here where we already have a place where people can't walk. So we've come out here. We'll jack this up, set a post real tight, and take a little bit of the weight off this beam. So that's a good example of one way to fix it. Just like we're shortening the span over there by putting in that, we'll shorten the span over here. Now, let's come back in the other area and look at another thing that can be done. Get all my lights. Let's get all the lights. Okay. Do me. Okay, another thing that can be done is blocking and bracing. Now, you've seen this in new home construction, probably. Blocking is just where they take an example here. They just take a piece of wood, it should be the size of the joist, and go in between and nail this joist and that joist. And that's called blocking. The other way is what's called bridging. And that is putting these cross members in. And they were all over the house. We took them out, we saved them because we knew we wanted to put them back in. But these were put in as the house was built before there was a floor on top. And I know that because they're nailed. This is a better example. It would have gone in like this, and they nailed it from the top. You can see the nails coming out, and then nailed it from the bottom going up. But we had to remove all those to work with the joist. But again, we saved them. Now what these do are tie one joist to the other. And load doesn't have to go straight down. It will follow whatever path you give it. So when you tie them together, it helps take load off this joist and spread it over to that joist. And when you do that across the whole room at various when you do that throughout the whole space at various intervals, it really helps stiffen the floor. And these will actually remove deflection in the floor. Doing the blocking between actually adds some strength to the floor. So remember, deflection isn't necessarily a sign of weakness in the floor. It's that bouncy feel. The floor is strong enough. But you can take a floor and add these and actually get that deflection to lessen. So we need to put these back. And there's a lot of sciencey stuff behind how that works. So as the joist sits upright, there are rules about how tall it can be versus the width of the wood. If you had something too skinny and too tall, you're going to get a tendency for it to rotate when it's under that compression that we talked about. And so we need it to be completely vertical. And that's what these do. It locks in that top and keeps it from falling over, and also helps transfer load from one place to another. Remember way, way back when Joe did the demonstration, actually she was right here, where she stood on a piece of pipe and the pipe went in the ground easily versus you stand on your feet and you're fine. It's because your load is spread out. So this has the effect of spreading load. Now, in old houses, this was very, very common. It's also very common in repairing old houses, because when you do the blocking, you have to be incredibly precise in your cuts. They can't have a gap. They need to be in there very, very tight to get the load to transfer. This is easy to get in tight. If you get your angle cut correctly on both ends, you can push it up and get full contact. So again, we saved all these. We'll go back, pull out the nails, and put them back. They also have the advantage of being able to run things through them. So look at what a nice gap that is. That's about a 9-inch gap. And we're going to run little bitty air conditioning ducts, so we can run that through there. If we had blocking going across, we couldn't get anything through without drilling holes in it. So this is much better for what we're doing in the basement. It's very standard in rehabbing old houses. And if you look through here, you can see the dining room where, oh, you're in shadow. If you look through here, you can see the dining room where we haven't had to do anything to these floor joists. So all of that bridging is still in place. So you can see across that span, there are 3 sets about equally spaced. And I can tell just by looking, there's no sagging or deflection in that floor. There are some factors that are considered in house design. One, you think, well, why don't they just over-design everything so that no floor has a risk of sagging? Well, first of all, they do over-design to some degree because, again, we don't get anywhere close to structural failure in the strength of these with a good amount of deflection. But there's a cost to it, because the way to over-design is, again, use larger lumber, use higher quality lumber. Those things add to the expense. I'll give you an example. When we replaced the lintels here, we went back 7 or 8 inches from the brick. I think the code is really only 3. So we're about 4 inches long on one side, so 8 inches long in total on 3 lengths. So 8 times 3, here I go doing math, 8 times 3, 24. So there's 2 extra feet of angled steel in each of our windows, and we did, I don't know, 15, 20 windows or so. I think I calculated we bought somewhere close to 30 extra feet of steel because we went a little farther. But we just didn't want to run the risk. This is old brick. It's not as hard as new brick. The closer you are to the edge, the more stress you put on that brick. So we wanted to distribute that load out. So we did over engineer that a little bit. But in general, things like the bracing, it's much cheaper, the bridging, blocking, whatever you want to call it, than upsizing everything in the house. So to recap that, we're strong enough down here. We have a few issues. We're going to improve on them. And we've planned ahead with how we did this floor to make sure we can do that. It would have been nice if on day one we had firm plans and we were able to stick to that and not deviate. We wouldn't be putting that beam in and doing this work. But again, the use of the house changed dramatically from the first vision for it to its use as a nonprofit. And in the long run, it's not that much incrementally to do it, but we have to do it now before we put a ceiling up. Once we put a ceiling up, we're done in here. So as I said, we will go joist by joist, beam by beam, do a full inspection. We have a lot of little things to do. We're missing some bolts in another area. We need some joist hangers in other areas, depending on how we did the repair. But that's something we'll do on very close inspection of each room when the time comes. So one area I've already looked at, and I don't really know about this. I'm going to have to do some research and digging on it. On this beam, they cut a hole up this way to run the pipe vertically through there. Now I know you can drill holes that way with little impact. I don't know what this does to the strength of this beam, but we do have room here on the top of this support to that support to add something against this to go across. So if we do feel like it's not strong enough, that's a relatively easy fix that we can do. But you've seen it upstairs in old houses. They do all kinds of things going, through, and what we saw in the attic mess where they just chopped the joist out completely and removed them. That was very bad. These are all more minor in scope, but again, worth a very close look to make sure we get it right. Okay, this is the second exit I've filmed because I did the first one and Joe said, "Did you hear yourself? I think instead of Incredible House, you said Incredible Hulk." And we went back and played it, and I did, but it is a hulking beast of a house. So thanks for watching. I hope that what we talked about made sense with these spans and the floor joist. To sum it up, the longer the span, the bigger the joist, the closer together you need for strength. And we've obviously modified this quite a bit with taking care of the rot in the end. So we've got to get this right before the ceiling goes in. But we're most excited about the apartment and getting those walls up. That's that critical path thing for the plumbing to be able to bring these vent stacks up and route them where they need to go. So that is our, as Joe says, our number 2 goal in the new year is to get those bathrooms done so we can get rid of that porta potty. So thanks for watching. Watching these videos helps us. Be sure and share them with friends, spread the word. We had a very nice person share our Facebook page with all their contacts, and we got almost 100 extra Facebook followers that day when she did that. So little things like that matter to us. Every penny helps. This is an expensive proposition, and we are a nonprofit, so we rely on all kinds of support from our donors, our volunteers, our in-kind donors, and you guys here watching YouTube. It means a lot to us. So hope you enjoyed this. We will see you next time back here at the League-Kempner House in Galveston.